What's up, YouTube? This is Brett Hoover from Rants. Um, Today I'm coming to you with the Lovecraft Country episode 4. I thought this episode was a lot better than the previous episode. I thought it got back to the original storyline. I was really intrigued by that. I was really excited about that. I felt like the last episode kind of got off on like a completely different path, a completely different storyline. Feel like the same thing as what the first two episodes did. I kind of felt like this episode kind of had more of a, I don't know, it was kind of Raiders of the Lost Ark kind of feel to it. It was Indiana Jones like. I felt like there was a lot of little things in there that I don't know that I felt like they could have changed, could have maybe switched up a little bit, could have had it where it wasn't so predictable. Like it felt like it was one of those shows, kind of like if you've ever watched the 1980s MacGyver or something along those lines, where you know that there's always something that's set up for the main cast to find or to be able to create where that they can accomplish their goals. I kind of felt like that was the way this episode felt to me. Kind of felt like everything had to be set into place and put into place for them to succeed in this episode. Kind of felt like it was just kind of they went on hope more than they did on rationale in a lot of different ways. But overall, I thought it was one of the better episodes of this series. I felt like it kind of had that same feel as, like I said, the first two did, but it also had the kind of a more of an exploration feel. We're really getting into the meat of the subject when it comes to episode 4. So, anyways, let me go ahead and get into it. I thought the opening take with Montrose is getting to be a character that I'm really, really excited about. He's kind of I thought at first, I thought it was going to be the Uncle George that was going to be the kind of the guide for Atticus. But actually, it's not. It's after Uncle George died in episode 2, it became more of Montrose took on that lead. It's a hesitant lead. You can tell there's more to Montrose than what this show is letting on. They're giving us little hints here and there, but they're not really going in depth on his character just yet. Maybe that's something that they'll do a little bit in future episodes. I'm hoping they will. I feel like he's a little bit too mysterious for my liking at this point, but he is becoming one of my favorite characters on the show. It's still Letty that's my biggest favorite on it. But anyways, this scene starts off where and it was kind of something that dealt with later on in the future part of the episode, where Montrose, he's listening to the radio and there's all this communist stuff about how the communist regime is barbarians compared to democracy and so forth like that. And we got to remember, this is at the beginning of the Cold War, so we're having a lot of Cold War references when it comes to this. But it deals with later on with Titus in the Order of the Ancient Dawn, when they go into the Native Americans' lands, and they kind of portray themselves as civilization compared to what the Native Americans had. And that is where that whole tie-in with perception on the radio of where the communist is bad, America is good. Same with Titus, was the the Order of the Ancient Dawn was good. Basically, the white man was good, and then everyone else was primitive. And he was adding some kind of intellectual quality, some kind of civilizational quality when it came to introducing himself to these natives. But overall, the first thing when it deals with that, it talks about Montrose, he goes and he finds the Uncle George had given him before he died, had given him the bylaws or the Order of the Ancient Dawn. And there's one scene on there where it shows this little saying that is off of these bylaws, and it involves Adam says or Adam speaks, something like that, and then Eve sins. God gets mad basically, and then God creates monsters and sends them out into the world, and then Eve is basically devoured along those lines. So it's basically this is actually becomes a little bit more important as the episode progresses, especially at the very end of the episode. It kind of explains a little bit of what is going on, how Atticus is some of Atticus's abilities. At least I believe it does. But overall, Montrose, he decides, you know what? I'm going to just burn anything that has anything to do with this. Now, that's important, because I kind of feel like Montrose is hiding something. Montrose is, yes, he's all in for Atticus, but he is he wants to protect Atticus, but there's some kind of connection that he has with this Order of the Ancient Dawn that I kind of feel like is going to be brought out later. I don't feel like he's definitely not the good guy that he's kind of letting on, or the hesitant good guy that he's letting to, go on. So anyways, he burns these bylaws so that Atticus will never get them. He goes into, it goes into the regular part of the episode where right after that of Christina, she's moving around in town now in Chicago. She's trying to get into Letty's house. But there's another little key scene from the last episode that actually plays a role in her being unable to enter into the house. According to her, she's looking for the orrery of Titus's. And this orrery, it plays into a big role. It's something about some kind of like time machine. And that's one thing I didn't really quite understand about that episode. But I'll get to that a little bit later. But as far as when Christina is trying to enter into the house, she's stopped by this force field. And if you look directly to the left, you'll see the blood where that witch doctor had put the blood of that goat on the side. So that's some sort of protection spell that kept Christina out of it. Now, that actually plays into, is she possessed with some kind of demonic spirit? She's demonic in some way, because this spell does not protect against just regular human beings. This has something to do with her having some kind of demonic spirit. Of course, she's a witch, I guess you could say that's a form of demonic. She's dealing with these black arts when it comes to things, or black magic when it comes to these things. So I guess that is to be expected in that regard, to have some kind of demonic feel to it. So anyway, she's unable to go in there. Well, she's actually into trying to find this orrery of Titus's. This orrery, like I was saying, is some sort of time machine where it allows them to go into. It's not just the notes that they're looking for. It's this orrery somehow. I don't know if it started up, creates along with the notes that Titus had hid. If it creates an opening where that they can go into the Garden of Eden or something along those lines. I'm excited to find out what that actually will entail in future episodes. But right now, Christina is unable to get into it, into the house. So Letty basically tells her to get lost, and she is, and she appears kind of in the middle of the episode, but she doesn't really play a big role. It's actually William, her assistant, that actually plays a bigger role in this episode than what she does. But we also find Atticus in the library, and this is what I thought was really funny about it, is he goes into his local library, and he's like, you know what? I'm going to find something about Titus in here that's going to explain the whole narrative to me. I thought this was silly. And I'll tell you why I thought this was silly. I feel like they always scratch the surface when it comes to this show. The characters, I mean, I feel like they think that things are just so out in the open that you're just going to have these these characters. I mean, these questions just answered by just going to your local library, and you're going to find everything about Titus. Well, Titus did do some things that, he was influential. He went on a lot of explorations, and, there is historical accounts of him. But of course, there's not going to be anything of the Order of the Ancient Dawn or anything along those lines. The only thing that he finds is that there is a museum, and I believe it was in Boston, where he did actually, he goes to try to look for answers. But before he leaves the library, he finds that Montrose had actually checked this book out before. So Montrose had actually checked out basically anything that had to do with Titus. So Atticus comes to the conclusion, you know what? I'm going to go confront my father about this. I'm going to see what he knows, see if he'll tell me, even though he knows that Montrose probably isn't going to be honest with him completely. But anyways, him and Letty go and they confront Montrose about this. Montrose, of course, he does this thing, I don't know anything, blah, 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 this other kind of stuff. But then he also gives Letty a little hint of maybe where they should go and what they should look for. So they decide, the three of them decide that they're going to go to a Boston museum that deals with Titus, and they're going to see if they can find some answers, maybe through some of the artifacts that are there. Well, when they get to right before they go on their road trip, with Hippolyta and a few others decide, well, hey, you know what? We're going to go along with you. And okay, this is another part that I'm not liking about this show. I kind of feel like every time that we go to a really important moment where that they're, going off to try to find something, I always kind of feel like it always has like this road trip kind of feel to it. And I hate that aspect of it, because I feel like this show, if it wants us to take it seriously, it needs to take itself seriously. And I know it kind of wants to add like this, this appeal to it, this kind of family appeal, and it wants to introduce these characters to the show, the characters in Lovecraft Country, the family and so forth. But I feel like that also kind of takes away from the importance of what they're actually trying to find. But anyways, they end up going, they go to this museum, they find this map that leads to might be something important, and then they find this gigantic statue of Titus. Well, this statue of Titus, this is what I think is kind of odd about it too. You have very first thing that Atticus goes to is the map. It's like he understands somehow this vague map is something of importance, that this vague map will somehow be something that will lead him to discovering the secret of it. Well, Montrose, he knows the guard that is over the library, that watches over the library, and he actually ends up getting access to this to the library that night. Well, when they go in there that night, and here's another one of the little things. They come prepared. They have a rope. They have everything that is used basically for rock climbing. So when they get into the in there, they got all these flashlights. They're looking at this statue. They're trying to find an opening. They believe that there's a door on there, in some form or fashion. So when it comes to that, Montrose decides, you know what? Turn your flashlights off. Now, this is where I feel like he knows more information than what he lets on, because he knows exactly what to do to be able to open this. So they turn their flashlight off. The moon comes in and shines a light and opens the door on the statue. Well, okay. Here's another problem I have. And this is just me. I'm going through my mind and I'm thinking, wait a second. none of this really adds up to me from a logical standpoint. Because if this museum was placed there after Titus's death, the statue was there, the map was there, but yet the Order of the Ancient Dawn didn't know how to really get into it. They didn't. He didn't want them to be able to, I guess, find his secrets, basically. So why would you put how would you be able to put the map that is on the other directly on the other side? You're able to put that map there where that the light can bounce off the statue and then directly to the map, opening up that door. I mean, it's just not logical that all of these items would have been placed in the exact same spot for them to be able for this to have worked. But I digress. I get it. It's a show. Things don't always have to make sense. I just feel like with this show, it doesn't take the steps needed to give people answers when it comes to that. For people, it's great when you're watching the show and you're like, oh man, this is great. I'm enjoying what I'm feeling. But then, you always just kind of have those moments after that show that you're like, that part don't make sense. Why does that part not make sense? And they give no clues inside of the actual episodes that it actually, that actually helps on that. But either way, they go in there, and of course, they prepare with a rope. So they go in there, they tie the rope on, they go down into this little cavern. They come across this gigantic chasm, basically, where that, you can't see the bottom of it, but yet they've come prepared because they've got all this rock climbing thing, even though they were just going to a museum. So anyways, Atticus tells Letty, oh, you go across and you see if this is safe, basically, and we'll just tie a rope onto you, and don't worry, if you fall, we'll catch you. Well, there's a couple of problems with that. If she falls and you have a rope tied around your waist and you fall down there, what's going to end up happening? Two things is going to happen. You're probably not going to survive. One, when you fall and that rope tightens, you're going to get your back broke. Second, if you somehow survive that, if you're in the middle of that and you fall, and it swings you, you're going to hit the side of the cliffs, and you're going to hit all those rocks, and you're going to die that way. So I don't really understand the whole point of the rope. The rope wasn't going to save her. The rope would just be there to get her body out if she fell. But either way, they go on the other side. Letty, she makes her trip across, and as she does, well, old Atticus decides, you know what, I'll join her. There's these things that are flying up and scaring her, so I'm gonna go over there with her and see what's going on. So he takes the lantern, he goes forward, and then as soon as he gets to where she is, well, then the boards start deteriorating. Well, when the board starts deteriorating, the logical point would be for all of them to get back to the other side, because they don't know what's at the end of this board. Basically, they don't know. But instead of doing that, and this is where I kind of either feel like it's either them just not thinking properly, or it is Montrose knowing more than what he lets on. And by that, what I'm meaning is, instead of him telling them to get on back, what he does is he just jumps to the other side. Atticus catches him, and then they go, and then they come across this puzzle. Well, of course, Montrose out of nowhere knows exactly how to solve this puzzle, which either lets you know that he either memorized the bylaws from front to back before he burned them, or either he knows, like I said, more than what he lets on. Well, so they get through there before the board deteriorates fully. They now have no ways back, so they have to go forward. Well, they're going as they're going forward. They get in this water, and that's one thing that Titus. I mean not Titus, but Atticus tells them that the tide is fixing to come in. They are going to about an hour before they drown. Okay. Now, for me personally, I'm terrified of drowning. I'm pretty sure the average individual is terrified of drowning. But right after he tells Letty and his father Montrose that they have an hour, he decides, well, now I'm going to confront my father about this. Now I'm going to say, hey, how did you know all this? Man, it's kind of weird. You know all this stuff. Well, he does that. And I thought that was such an odd time. I would feel like if I survive this, maybe then I confront him about it. Till then, I'm just going to try to, I don't know, not drown at that point, leave that family drama for another time, and see if I can maybe survive this. And then we'll hash that out a little bit later. My personal opinion on it. That's what I would do in that situation. Pretty sure that's what the average individual would do too. But as the tide begins to rise on things, they just happen to come across, and this is another part where I feel like this show doesn't give us enough information or doesn't take the fans seriously enough when it comes from a logical standpoint. The body of Letty's neighbor just happens to float by. Well, to her, she doesn't think of it in this way. She doesn't think, wait a second, I thought I was in Boston. My house is in Chicago. So you're telling me that these tunnels actually lead to back to Chicago. That's a long ways. That's a long tunnel that just happens to lead in this one particular place. Kind of makes them realize if I was at that point, I'd have been trying to find some way to go back, and I would have just gone down in my house and found the tunnels and so forth and gone from there. That seemed like would be a safer route. But anyways, it doesn't shock her a bit. It's just like, oh, well, there's my dead neighbors that everyone's looking for. But fair enough. She's not shocked by the whole magical implications of her neighbor's dead body that was in Chicago all of a sudden being in this tunnel, all these hundreds of miles away. She's not thinking about it in that way. It's where I feel like she's not thinking logical in this way. Even though I will give Letty this, she is becoming by far one of my favorite characters of this show, if not my favorite altogether. But she has these moments where she can be so heroic and so smart on some things, and then do something that is so utterly stupid, or say something that is so utterly stupid that I feel like demeans her character and where they're wanting to go with her character. I feel like when it comes to Letty, when it comes to Letty, I feel like I know Atticus is supposed to be the main guy. Atticus is too fickle for me. Atticus, after they went through episode 1 and 2, he's like, you know what? I'm going to leave. I'm not going to be a part of this anymore. This was just a little too weird. I'm going to go back to Florida, pretend this never even happened with Uncle George and all this other stuff, while leaving the other ones to try to contend and deal with the situation at hand. He wasn't being the heroic protagonist of the series that I thought he was going to be. Instead, that role has been taken up by Letty. And I'm glad it has, because I think she's actually more prepared for it. She's actually just a better actress in general for that role. I feel like Atticus is a little bit hesitant in my view. That's one thing I don't really like about his character. I feel like he's not the strong character that he needs to be. I feel like when it comes to Letty, I feel like in this episode she takes charge. I feel like that's needed for this. This episode would have been terrible without her. But anyways, as they're going along, they happen across the elevator. First thing that comes to Atticus's mind is, okay, y'all two get in the elevator. I'm going to go, before we all drown. I'll get in the elevator and I'm going to continue on. Again, that's where Atticus is not taking consideration. They are all in this together. They are all in this together. This isn't just a him thing. He thinks because of his blood and because of how the Order of the Ancient Dawn is after him in a lot of ways, he feels he still doesn't grasp the concept that even if he went to Florida or even if he continued on and they just tried minding their own business, there is no way this order is going to allow them to live, basically. So they're all in it, whether they like it or not. They're all in it at this point. There's no turning around for them. So Letty finally convinces him of this. Well, so they continue on as excuse me. As the water begins to rise, they come across this other part, and it's got this it's got this armhole, and it's got a person's arm that had been completely ripped apart in it. And so what ends up happening is Atticus is like, very first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to stick my arm in here and see if this thing latches onto me. Seems logical, seems smart, seems like something that the main protagonist would do without even thinking. At least if you're Atticus, that seems like the smart thing to do. So he does that, catches his arm, makes him bleed. Luckily, that's the one thing that actually causes it to for them to make it on for this thing to open up from the top of the ceiling and a rope to come down. Well, it opens up the door. I get it. That's a smart thing. It all worked out in his favor. But I kind of feel like, man, that's just like a shot in the dark at that point. I feel like that's just literally just a shot in the dark that he just sticks his arm in there and he just is like, okay, well, that worked. That personally bothered me because that's another one of those parts that there's nothing that would made him think that would have worked, but yet he just tries it anyways. So anyways, they get up there. They find this. They find all these dead people that I guess it's the hull of Titus's ship. And they get up there. They find these the deciphered pages, but when they go to reach for them, then this mummy that was holding the papers comes to life, and it's this spiritualist. That's a Native American spiritualist. Well, somehow Atticus is able to understand her. Now, I have a theory. Not quite sure if this has anything to do with anything, or if this is a correct one. But I feel like Samuel somehow went at the beginning of this episode when it says Adam speaks or Adam says, I forget the exact wording to it. Him being Atticus being the direct lineage, I guess, of Adam. I feel like Samuel somehow placed a spell on him that he was able to understand all these different languages, and these other people that were speaking these other languages can understand him. I'm assuming that's what the whole part of the Adam speaks meant in that show. I'm not sure on that completely. There's still a lot of things about that little passage that kind of, bothers me. I'm not quite sure exactly what God they're talking about in that, and the order and the whole monsters and the whole thing along those lines. But anyway, so he's speaking to the spiritualist. The spiritualist tells him that she was on Titus's expedition, that Titus forced her and their people to do a lot of things. He promised that if she helped, that she would, help him find all of these different puzzle pieces to be able to decode these pages. That that he would release her family and they'd all be after the expedition was over, they'd be able to go back to life as usual. Well, that didn't work out. It turns out he decided to kill the spiritualist after, I guess, he found out everything that he felt like he could use from that spiritualist. But one thing I didn't really understand was yes, she says that he betrayed her, and he did. There's no doubt about it. He betrayed her. But here's the part that I'm also kind of a little bit confused about is why exactly, let's see, what was her name? Yahima. I didn't understand why he brought Yahima back to life, or why, if those pages were moved, Yahima would come back to life. I didn't understand that aspect of it, because when she came back to life from that mummified corpse, I felt like that was, she was there to protect the secrets. I can understand that fully. But you actually find out later that Titus actually had put a curse on her to make sure that she didn't speak about any further about what those, those decoded messages meant, or decoded pages. So I didn't really understand, if she wasn't there to protect those pages from being found, then what exactly was the point of her being there? So when they go to get the pages, all of a sudden all the water starts flooding in. They only have a short period of time. This is where they run to the elevator. This is where Letty actually takes on another heroic aspect, is the pages go to float away. She realizing, hey, you know what, certain death, I'm still going to go and I'm still going to get these pages. And so she goes underneath the water. She grabs the pages and makes it back to them in time. But when she gets there in time and they hit the button to go up, then Yahima lets off this scream. And it's like a piercing scream that was about to explode all their heads. Well, Atticus hits her, knocks her out. And the next scenes that you see is him talking to Yahima, and then he goes back to Montrose, and he's telling him, well, okay, Titus had placed a siren's curse upon Yahima as kind of like this thing of where that she'll never be able to tell us any more than what she's already told us, basically, about these pages. Yahima was hesitant. She didn't want to blame, when she first met Atticus, she didn't want to blame Atticus for Titus's faults, but she also didn't know Atticus enough to be able to feel comfortable in telling him any more than what he already knew either. So she probably wasn't going to open up to him anyways. But there's this one moment, and I thought it was one of the best moments of the episode, where Atticus finally gets the love and affection that he should have really been getting from his father for all those years. His father tells him, hey, I'm really proud of you. You're really acting like a hero here. You're really, you're coming into your own, and I'm proud of you as a father. He tells him, he says, you've turned into this great man despite me. And I felt like that really tells a lot about Atticus's past, about his relationship with his father, that his father was probably not a big part of his life. And if he was a detrimental part of his life. So I kind of felt like with that aspect that really brought a little bit of Atticus's background to the forefront a little bit. Him and Montrose's background, I guess you could say. But then after that, there is that moment where Montrose goes into the room, shuts the door, and he goes behind Yahima and he apologizes to her before he slits her throat. Okay. Two things about that. It is either, again, Montrose obviously knows more than what he's letting on. He's either doing this, and I'm not quite sure he's a good guy. I get it. He's supposed to be some form of a good guy, a hesitant good guy. But I kind of feel like he's still kind of in it for the Order of the Ancient Dawn. I kind of feel like there's some kind of connection with him to that. It's not just Atticus's mother's connection and Montrose trying to figure out what that connection actually is. Montrose has a part of this. There's something about this that he's trying to not let Atticus go any further on. Now, whether it's to protect him or the Order of the Ancient Dawn, I don't know, and that's something that we'll find out in later episodes. But to me, I feel like there's something really nefarious about him. There's something that we're going to find out in later episodes that's going to cause us to realize, okay, he's kind of a turncoat, basically. He's a traitor to his own son. Now, at the end of the day, who knows? He might pick his own son over any allegiances he might have with the Order of the Ancient Dawn. I don't know. I personally hope that it goes that way. I actually kind of believe after the moment that him and Atticus had, I kind of feel like that's kind of where it's heading. So I'm excited about that aspect. But, we'll just have to see on it. But there was so many little things in this episode that didn't make sense to me. And I guess that's part of it. They don't want to give you all the answers. They want you to, be guessing, so that you'll tune in for the next episode. But one thing that I didn't really understand is when they're at the museum, Hippolyta, however you say her name, somehow she learns that everybody had made it back to Chicago. I didn't understand exactly how she knew this aspect of it. I did not know who told her. Did they call? There was no cell phones back in the 1950s, so they didn't call her and let her know. So I don't know if there was a message left or what. I didn't catch that aspect of it. But her daughter comes across Uncle George's map, and it shows that Artem on it. So in her quest to find knowledge of what happened to her husband, she decides, you know what? My husband died on this trip to this Artem, so I'm going to take my daughter along with me. Felt like there was a lack of judgment on that one. I felt like I don't understand what she is intending to find in Artem, which we know there's probably nothing in Artem that she's going to actually come across. She's not going to find these clues that's going to lead her to what is going to lead her to find out what her husband's death is. Only way she's going to find that out is to actually speak with Atticus and them to find out really the truth about it. So I kind of felt like her trip to Artem without them, I kind of feel like it'll probably go somewhere, but it's kind of that's another one of those needle in a haystack moments that she's just like, you know what, we're turning around and we're going to, I guess, Massachusetts. Makes perfect sense, whatever. But that kind of bothered me. Another thing that kind of bothered me, or that kind of, I won't say it bothered me, but it kind of confused me, is at the beginning of the episode when Montrose is reading that little passage about Adam speaks, and Eve sinned, and God let loose these monsters, and the monsters devoured Eve, all that kind of stuff. These monsters are afraid of light. So I don't know if if that was supposed to be a reference to the Abrahamic God, or if that's a reference to one of these old gods that actually maybe have created these things. See, that's where I'm a little bit confused, because when these monsters are afraid of light, it kind of makes me think that they come from a place of darkness, and the God that created them came from a place of darkness as well, because to release these monsters in the world, I mean, come on, that's a pretty dark thing to do, especially to the world around them. So I kind of felt like that was kind of maybe a reference maybe to the old gods. Maybe that's a Cthulhu reference right there. I don't know. But I feel like there's more to it. I feel like there's more to that passage that we're going to find out in later episodes on that. So I was excited about that, but I was also kind of confused by that. But yeah, overall, I felt like this episode got the story back on track. I felt like all the craziness that was in the first two episodes uh, now is going to be on continuation. It's not going to lead off like I thought it was in the last episode. I thought, man, this is going to be really episodic, where it's going to lead us in one direction, then lead us in another direction, and somehow it's going to try to tie it all in together at the very end. Thankfully, it doesn't look like that's going to happen. Now they're going to. It looks like going to. They've already tied all of this, the connections together, so there won't be all these different episodic things where they're going here and they're going there and all this other kind of things. All these things are now tied in together, and I'm glad, because that's something we won't have to worry about in future episodes. So overall, I think this was probably the best episode ever since the first episode. I am excited for episode 5. I'm really thinking that they're going to be able to find out something, through those passages. I'm really still kind of a little bit kind of confused about how Atticus thought that that somehow he was going to get these spells and he was going to be able to use these spells, Titus's spells, as a way of fighting off Christina and the cult and all these other kind of things like that. When Christina literally says herself that most people cannot use but one, they're lucky if they could use one spell, but they're not going to be able to learn multiple spells. She's been able to do that. She's now invulnerable like her father was. But I feel like Atticus just, I don't know, I guess that's a part of Atticus where I kind of feel like he thinks he's more, or knows he's more important than what what the show had maybe entailed him to be, I guess. So that was one thing that I kind of feel like, for someone that doesn't really even know the bylaws or anything about this cult, to be able to think that you could use spells, kind of feel like that's a little out there. But we'll see in the next episode. And as always, guys, if follow us on Rants or Us, we're going to be doing episodic reviews of Lovecraft Country for the rest of the season. Be sure to always share our videos, to like them. And if you've enjoyed this episode, please, guys, please, we're a new channel. If you enjoy our content, please subscribe. We're trying to get to 1,000. So any help that y'all can give us in that regard of subscribers, or likes or comments or any of those things, we much appreciated. And as always, guys, y'all take care. Have a good day. See y'all next episode.